Marcus Webb was sleeping, 40 feet underwater, in the Yellow Sea, 50 yards from a North Korean naval base, with enemy patrol boats passing overhead. And he was sleeping, not unconscious, not drowning, not dead, sleeping. His body was tied to a rock with paracord, tethered like a boat at anchor. His closed-circuit rebreather was in his mouth, breathing for him, in and out, pressurized gas filling his lungs with every breath. The water was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to kill an unprotected human in hours. But Marcus was in a 7mm wetsuit with thermal layers underneath. His body was losing heat slowly, but it was losing heat, and he was sleeping, dreaming about his daughter, about her 3rd birthday party, about dry land, about breathing air that wasn't filtered through a machine. This was hour 36 of his mission, halfway through 72 total hours underwater. No surface breaks, no coming up for air, no seeing the sky. And Marcus needed to sleep, because even Navy SEALs need sleep, even on impossible missions, even 40 feet underwater in enemy territory. So he'd found a rock formation, a small underwater cave, tied himself to an outcropping with paracord around his waist, made sure his rebreather was secure, made sure he wouldn't drift while unconscious, made sure the enemy patrol boats couldn't see him from above. And then he'd closed his eyes and gone to sleep underwater. The human brain isn't designed for this. Sleep requires the body to relax completely, to let go, to trust that you're safe, that you won't die while unconscious. You can't relax when you're underwater, when your lungs are filled with pressurized gas mixture, when removing your rebreather for even 10 seconds would mean drowning, when the cold is slowly killing you, when enemy boats are overhead. But Marcus had learned to relax anyway, had learned to trust the rebreather, trust the equipment, trust his training, trust that he wouldn't die in his sleep, had learned to sleep underwater, because that's what this mission required. 72 hours, 3 full days, continuous submersion, underwater reconnaissance of a North Korean naval base, gathering intelligence that could prevent a war. And to complete that mission, Marcus had to do things humans aren't supposed to be able to do. Sleep underwater, eat underwater, work underwater, live underwater. For 72 hours. 3 years later, Marcus would sit in a Navy psychologist's office trying to explain what had happened to him during those 72 hours. "How did you survive?" she would ask. And Marcus would give her an answer she didn't want to hear. "I didn't survive," he would say. "I learned to live there." Because that's what happened during those 72 hours. Marcus Webb stopped being a human who was visiting the ocean. He became something that lived in the ocean, something that slept tied to rocks 40 feet underwater, something that ate nutrition paced through a breathing apparatus, something that worked in darkness and cold and pressure, something that wasn't quite human anymore. But right now at hour 36, Marcus didn't know any of that yet. Right now he was just sleeping, dreaming about his daughter's birthday, breathing through a machine, 40 feet below the surface, living underwater. When he woke up 4 hours later, he wouldn't fully remember his dreams, wouldn't remember his daughter's face clearly, wouldn't remember what dry land felt like. He would only remember the cold, the dark, the pressure, the sound of his own breathing, because that was his world now. That was reality. Everything else, the surface, the air, the warmth, that was the dream. This was real. This was home. And Marcus still had 36 more hours to go. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Army Story so you never miss these true tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And have you ever pushed past what you thought was humanly possible? Water Wave. 3 days earlier. Naval Special Warfare Command, Coronado, California. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb, 28 years old, SEAL Team 3, sat in a classified briefing room. The walls were soundproof. The doors were locked. No phones. No recording devices. Whatever was about to be discussed would never leave this room. Commander Harris stood at the front. Behind him, a projection screen showed satellite images of a North Korean naval facility. Gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is classified top secret. If you choose not to accept this mission, you will never speak of it again. Understood? 5 SEALs nodded. Marcus was one of them. North Korea has been moving naval assets into this facility, Harris continued, pointing at the screen. We believe they're preparing for a military operation. Could be an attack on South Korea. Could be something else. We don't know. What we do know is that we need intelligence, photos, ship counts, weapon systems, anything that tells us what they're planning. We can't send a submarine close enough. They'd detect it. We can't send aircraft. They'd shoot them down. We can't send satellites. They've camouflaged the facility. So we need to send a human, a SEAL, underwater, to get close enough to take photographs. Marcus raised his hand. Sir, how close? 50 yards. The room went silent. 50 yards from an enemy naval base, one of the other SEALs said. That's suicide. That's why this mission is voluntary, Harris said. We're not ordering anyone to do this. We're asking. What's the insertion method? Marcus asked. Submarine will drop you 5 miles offshore. You'll swim underwater to the target, conduct reconnaissance for 72 hours, then swim back to the extraction point. Wait, another SEAL interrupted. Did you say 72 hours? Yes. 72 hours underwater? That's impossible. The longest combat dive on record is 38 hours, and that SEAL was hospitalized for 2 weeks afterward. I'm aware, Harris said. That's why we're asking for volunteers. This mission will require the selected SEAL to remain underwater continuously for 72 hours. No surface breaks, no breathing air, no seeing the sky. Marcus leaned forward. Sir, what happens to the human body after 72 hours underwater? We don't fully know. We've run simulations. Medical experts say it's theoretically survivable, but there will be severe hypothermia, nitrogen narcosis, hallucinations, psychological breakdown. Your body will try to shut down. Your mind will try to make you surface. And if I surface, the mission fails, and we don't get the intelligence. And whatever North Korea is planning happens, and people die. Marcus looked at the other 4 SEALs. They were all shaking their heads. Too dangerous, too impossible, too insane. I'll do it, Marcus said. Harris studied his face. Petty Officer Webb, do you understand what you're volunteering for? This isn't a normal mission. The physical toll will be extreme. The psychological toll will be worse. You may not come back the same person. I understand, sir. Why do you want this mission? Marcus thought about his daughter, about preventing a war, about the thousands of lives that could be saved if they got this intelligence. Because someone has to do it, Marcus said. And I can. How do you know you can? I don't, but I'll find out. Harris nodded slowly. Mission briefing is in 1 hour. Welcome to Operation Deepwater. Present day, Yellow Sea, 5 miles off the North Korean coast. Marcus floated in the water next to the submarine. Night. No moon. Pitch black. The submarine had surfaced just long enough for Marcus to exit through the torpedo tube. Now it was descending, leaving him alone, 5 miles from enemy territory. Marcus checked his equipment one final time. Closed-circuit rebreather, a sophisticated breathing apparatus that recycled his breath, removed CO2, and added oxygen. No bubbles, no trail, completely silent. Theoretically could last for 72 hours if the chemicals were maintained correctly. Dry suit, 7mm neoprene with thermal layers, would keep him warm for a while, but not for 72 hours. Nothing could keep a human warm in 50-degree water for 3 days. Compass and depth gauge for navigation. In total darkness. Underwater, where up and down stopped meaning anything. Camera equipment, waterproof. High resolution for documenting the North Korean facility. Food pouches, special nutrition paste in sealed containers. could be consumed underwater through a special valve in the rebreather. Tasted like cardboard, but it was calories. And his mind, his training, his will. Marcus took a breath through the rebreather. The gas was dense, pressurized, different from air. It would take getting used to. He checked his compass. The target was due west, 5 miles, at 40 feet depth. Should take about 4 hours of swimming. Marcus descended, slowly, equalizing pressure as he went. 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. This would be his depth for the next 72 hours. 40 feet below the surface, deep enough that patrol boats couldn't see him, shallow enough that the pressure wouldn't kill him. He started swimming, west, toward North Korea, toward the enemy, toward 3 days of living underwater. The first hour was normal, physical, swimming, navigating, checking equipment, all things Marcus had done 1,000 times in training. The second hour was when the cold started. Even with the thermal layers, the 50-degree water was pulling heat from his body. His fingers started to sting. His toes went numb. The third hour was when the isolation started. Total darkness. No surface. No reference points. Just swimming through black water. The only sound was his own breathing. The fourth hour was when Marcus saw the lights. The North Korean naval facility. Underwater floodlights illuminating the harbor. Ships. Docks, patrol boats. Marcus had arrived. He found his hide site, a rock formation with a small underwater cave, 50 yards from the facility, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid detection. Marcus checked his watch. 4 hours elapsed, 68 hours remaining. He tied himself to the rocks with paracord, secured his position, prepared to observe, and began the longest 3 days of his life, 12 hours underwater. Marcus's body temperature had dropped to 95.5 degrees Fahrenheit, still functioning, but declining. The shivering had started at hour 8, violent, uncontrollable, his body trying to generate heat, burning calories, fighting the cold. But you can't fight the cold forever. The ocean always wins. Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the camera. He'd been photographing ships for the past 8 hours, documenting everything, but his fingers weren't responding correctly anymore. He needed to eat, needed calories, needed to fuel his body's fight against hypothermia. Marcus reached for one of his food pouches. Special nutrition paste, 2,000 calories compressed into a tube the size of a toothpaste container. The pouch had a special valve that connected to his rebreather. He attached it, opened the valve, squeezed. Paste entered his mouth. Thick, cold, tasteless. He swallowed. It was like eating wet cement, but it was calories. Marcus consumed the entire pouch. 2,000 calories. Should keep him warm for a few more hours. But he knew the math. He was burning about 4,000 calories a day just fighting the cold. He had 12 food pouches, 24,000 total calories. For 72 hours, he'd burned 12,000 calories. The math didn't work. He'd run out of food before he ran out of mission. But command had known that, had accepted it. The mission mattered more than Marcus's comfort, more than his health, maybe more than his life. After eating, Marcus felt slightly warmer. The shivering decreased. His fingers worked better. He continued photographing. Ships, weapon systems, personnel movements, everything that might help prevent a war. Hour 13, hour 14, hour 15. The cold kept growing, kept seeping into his core. His body kept fighting, kept shivering, kept burning calories, trying to stay alive. And Marcus kept working, because that's what the mission required. By hour 16, his core temperature was down to 94 degrees. Mild hypothermia. His thinking was slower, his movements sluggish. But he was still conscious, still functional, still human. For now, 24 hours underwater. 1 full day. Marcus was exhausted. He'd been awake for 36 hours total, 12 hours before insertion plus 24 underwater. His body was screaming for sleep. But how do you sleep underwater? Marcus had trained for this, had practiced in pools, in controlled environments. But this was different. This was real. Enemy territory. Cold water. 40 feet deep. If he fell asleep and his rebreather malfunctioned, he'd drown. If he fell asleep and drifted away from his hide site, he'd be exposed. If he fell asleep and enemy divers found him, he'd be captured or killed. But he needed to sleep. The human body requires it. Even here, even now, Marcus checked his rebreather, functioning perfectly. Plenty of chemicals remaining. The machine would keep him breathing even while unconscious. He tied himself to the rock more securely, made sure he couldn't drift, made sure he was hidden in the underwater cave. Then he did something that no human should be able to do. He closed his eyes and went to sleep, 40 feet underwater. It was the strangest sensation. His body floating, the cold pressing against him, water all around, and yet sleeping. His brain fought it at first, screaming that this was wrong, that humans don't sleep underwater, that he'd drown. But Marcus had learned to ignore that voice, had learned to trust the equipment, trust the training. He slept for 4 hours. His dreams were strange, distorted. He was drowning. He was flying. He was his daughter. He was the ocean. When he woke up, he wasn't sure where he was for a moment. Couldn't remember if he was above water or below. Couldn't remember if he was human or something else. Then his training kicked in. He was underwater, on a mission, still 50 yards from a North Korean naval base. Still with 48 hours remaining. Marcus checked his equipment. Everything functional. The rebreather had kept him alive while he slept. He'd done it. He'd slept underwater. He was starting to understand what command had meant. This mission would change him, because humans don't sleep underwater. Humans don't live underwater. But Marcus was doing both, which meant he was becoming something that wasn't quite human anymore. 36 hours, halfway through the mission. Marcus's core body temperature was now 93 degrees. Deep hypothermia territory. His hands couldn't feel anything. His thinking was noticeably impaired. His vision was blurry, and he was hallucinating. At hour 32, he'd seen his daughter, swimming toward him underwater, smiling, reaching for him. He tried to grab her, but she dissolved into bubbles. At hour 34, he'd seen other SEALs, his team, swimming past, waving, but they weren't real, just tricks of his oxygen-deprived brain. At hour 35, he'd seen lights that weren't there, heard sounds that didn't exist, felt presences that couldn't be real. Nitrogen narcosis, the rapture of the deep. Nitrogen building up in his bloodstream, affecting his brain, making him see things. Combined with hypothermia and sleep deprivation, Marcus was operating in an altered state of consciousness. But he kept working, kept photographing, kept gathering intelligence, because that's what the mission required. He ate another food pouch, his sixth, halfway through his supplies. His body wasn't absorbing nutrition as efficiently anymore. His metabolism was slowing, his organs prioritizing survival over function. After eating, Marcus slept again, tied to his rock, 40 feet underwater, dreaming strange dreams. When he woke, he'd been asleep for 3 hours, and he'd had a revelation. He didn't want to surface. Somewhere during the past 39 hours, something had changed. The surface had stopped seeming real. The sky had become a myth. Air was something from a past life. This, the cold water, the darkness, the pressure, this was reality now. This was home. Marcus wasn't visiting the ocean anymore. He lived here. He checked his notes. He'd documented everything command needed. Ships, weapons, patrol schedules. The mission was technically complete. He could leave, could swim back to the extraction point, could surface, could breathe air, could be human again. But he had another 33 hours. Command wanted 72 hours of observation, to establish patterns, to verify data. So Marcus stayed, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Because down here, in the cold and the dark, Marcus had found something. Peace. He wasn't tired anymore, wasn't cold anymore, wasn't scared anymore. He just was, existing, floating, being, part of the ocean. 48 hours, 2 full days. Marcus's body had changed. His core temperature was stable at 93 degrees. Not rising, not falling. His body had adapted, accepted the cold, learned to function with it. His metabolism had slowed dramatically. He was burning only 2,000 calories a day now, making his food last longer. His breathing had changed, slower, deeper, more efficient, using less oxygen, wasting less energy. His heart rate was down to 40 beats per minute, half normal, conserving energy, prioritizing survival. Medically, Marcus should be dead, or at least incapacitated. Hypothermia at 93 degrees should make cognitive function nearly impossible. But Marcus was still thinking, still working, still conscious. Because he'd adapted. His body had learned to live in conditions humans aren't supposed to survive. He'd become something else. Marcus spent hours 48 through 56 photographing, documenting. He'd seen patterns now. Ship movements, patrol rotations, weakness in their security, all intelligence that would prevent a war. At hour 54, he ate his 10th food pouch. 2 remaining. 24 hours left. He'd have to ration. At hour 55, he saw something that wasn't a hallucination. North Korean combat divers. 3 of them. Swimming near his position. Searching. They'd detected something. Maybe thermal signatures. Maybe sonar. They knew someone was here. Marcus pressed himself against the rocks. Made himself small. Controlled his breathing. Silent. The divers swam past. 10 feet away. Then 20. Then gone. Close. Too close. Marcus waited an hour before moving, making sure they were really gone. His hide site wasn't safe anymore. They knew someone was here. They'd come back. But Marcus only had 16 hours left. He could hold, could stay hidden, could complete the mission. He tied himself tighter to the rocks, made himself invisible, became part of the ocean floor, and waited. 60 hours, 10 hours remaining. Marcus was no longer entirely rational. The hallucinations had become constant. He saw faces in the rocks, heard voices in the water current, felt hands touching him that weren't there. His sense of time had dissolved. He couldn't tell if minutes or hours were passing. Couldn't remember what he'd done an hour ago. Couldn't plan what he'd do in an hour. He existed only in the present moment. This breath, this heartbeat, this second. Past and future had stopped existing. And Marcus had stopped fighting it, had stopped trying to maintain his humanity, had accepted what he'd become, something that lived underwater. His daughter's face had faded from memory. He couldn't picture her clearly anymore, couldn't remember her voice, couldn't recall her birthday. The surface world was gone, forgotten, irrelevant. This was his world now, would always be his world. Marcus ate his 11th food pouch, 1 remaining, but he didn't care about food anymore, didn't feel hunger. His body had moved beyond basic needs. He photographed mechanically, automatically, not thinking, just doing, like a machine, like something that wasn't human. At hour 62, Marcus realized he was laughing, underwater, through his rebreather, laughing at nothing. At hour 64, he cried, not sure why, just tears flowing into his mask, mixing with the ocean. At hour 66, he stopped feeling cold, not because he'd warmed up, but because temperature had stopped meaning anything. Cold, warm, human concepts. For human bodies. For people who lived on land. Marcus didn't live on land anymore. He lived here. 72 hours. 3 full days. Mission complete. Marcus's watch alarm went off. Time to leave. Time to swim to the extraction point. Time to surface. He stared at the alarm, confused. Why would he leave? This was home. But training overrode confusion. He had orders. Complete the mission. Return to extraction point. Surface. Marcus untied himself from rocks. Felt strange. He'd been tethered for 3 days. Now he was free. He started swimming east, away from North Korea, toward the extraction point 5 miles away. The swim took 4 hours. Marcus moved slowly, his body barely functioning, running on nothing, empty, hollow. But he kept swimming, because that's what the mission required. At hour 76, Marcus reached the extraction point. Surface coordinates pre-programmed into his GPS. All he had to do was swim up, break the surface, breathe air, be human again. But Marcus hesitated. He looked up, toward the surface, 40 feet above him. Light filtering down from the sun he hadn't seen in 3 days. And he didn't want to go up, didn't want to leave the ocean, didn't want to breathe air, didn't want to be human. He belonged here, down here, in the cold, in the dark, in the pressure. But orders were orders. Marcus started ascending, slowly, decompressing, 10 feet per minute, allowing nitrogen to leave his bloodstream. 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. The surface was right there, right above him. Light, sky, air. Marcus broke through, and the world exploded. Sound, light, air, wind, warmth. Too much, too fast, too overwhelming. Marcus gasped. His lungs filled with air for the first time in 72 hours. And he choked, coughed, his body rejecting it. Air felt wrong, thin, weak, painful. Hands grabbed him. Navy divers, from the submarine, pulling him aboard. We got him. He's alive. Marcus was alive. But he wasn't the same Marcus who'd submerged 72 hours ago. That Marcus had been human. This Marcus wasn't. Naval Medical Center, San Diego, California. Marcus Webb sat in a therapy office, 3 months post-mission, still on medical leave. The psychologist, Dr. Sarah Chun, sat across from him with a file. How are you feeling today, Marcus? Fine. Are you still having the dreams? Yes. Tell me about them. Marcus looked out the window, at the sky, at the air, at the world that didn't feel like his anymore. I dream I'm underwater, he said quietly, 40 feet down, tied to rocks, breathing through a rebreather. And I'm happy. Happy. Yes, because that's where I belong. Down there, in the cold, in the dark. Dr. Chun wrote something. Marcus, you've been back on land for 3 months. Your physical health has mostly recovered. Your hypothermia has resolved. Your cognitive function has returned to normal. But you're still struggling psychologically. Why do you think that is? Because I'm not supposed to be here, Marcus said. Where are you supposed to be? Underwater. Marcus, you spent 72 hours submerged. That was the mission. But the mission is over. You completed it. You got the intelligence. The Navy says you prevented a war, potentially saved thousands of lives. You're a hero. I'm not a hero, Marcus said. I'm something that used to be human. Dr. Chun leaned forward. What do you mean by that? Marcus met her eyes. You asked me once how I survived 72 hours underwater. I told you I didn't survive. I learned to live there. Do you remember? Yes, I meant it. Somewhere during those 72 hours, I stopped being human. I stopped needing the things humans need. I stopped wanting the things humans want. I became something that lived underwater. And now that I'm back on land, I don't fit anymore. Marcus, what you experienced is called dissociation. It's a trauma response. Your brain created a psychological adaptation to help you survive an impossible situation. But it's not permanent. You're still human. You still belong here. Marcus shook his head. No, I don't. What makes you say that? I can't sleep anymore. Not in a bed. Not on land. The only time I sleep well is when I'm in water. I fill my bathtub, submerge my head, put a snorkel in my mouth, and then I can sleep. I can't eat normal food. It tastes wrong. The only thing I can eat is nutrition paste. The same paste I ate underwater. I can't handle warmth. I keep my apartment at 50 degrees. The same temperature as the ocean. Anything warmer feels wrong. I spend hours in the ocean, swimming, diving, holding my breath, trying to stay underwater as long as possible. My record is 9 minutes. I'm getting better. Doctor, I'm not recovering. I'm not getting better. I'm trying to go back to the place I belong. Underwater. Dr. Chun was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, the Navy is concerned about you. They're considering a medical discharge. Your commanding officer says you're not fit for duty. I'm not, Marcus agreed, because I can't function on land anymore. But put me back in the ocean, and I'm perfect. The mission changed you. No, the mission revealed what I really am. I'm not a human who can dive. I'm something that lives underwater. Always have been. I just didn't know it until I spent 72 hours there. I learned to live underwater, Doctor, and I can't unlearn it. I don't want to unlearn it. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb was medically discharged from the Navy 6 months after his mission. The official reason: psychological complications from extended underwater operations. The real reason: Marcus Webb couldn't function as a human anymore. The intelligence he gathered during his 72 hours underwater prevented a war between North and South Korea. Analysis of his photographs revealed that North Korea was planning a naval assault. The information allowed the U.S. to reposition forces and deter the attack. Thousands of lives saved because one SEAL learned to live underwater for 3 days. Marcus received the Navy Cross for his actions. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism during extended underwater operations in hostile waters." Petty Officer Webb's actions prevented an international conflict and saved countless lives. But Marcus never attended his medal ceremony. He was in the ocean. After his discharge, Marcus moved to Hawaii, lives in a small house near the shore, spends 12 to 14 hours a day in the water, swimming, diving, existing. He holds the unofficial record for longest breath hold by a former SEAL, 11 minutes, 43 seconds. He's working toward 15 minutes, toward being able to stay underwater longer, toward living there permanently. His daughter visits him once a year. She's 7 now. She brings him photos, tells him about school, about her life. Marcus tries to be present, tries to be a father, but his mind is always in the ocean, always 40 feet down, always tied to rocks, always breathing through a machine. "Do you regret it?" his daughter asked him once. "Do you regret the mission?" "No," Marcus said. "The mission showed me who I really am." "Who are you?" Marcus looked at the ocean, at the waves, at the water that called to him constantly. "I'm something that learned to live underwater," he said, "and now I can't live anywhere else." On his wall, Marcus keeps one photograph, taken during hour 48 of his mission, 40 feet underwater, in the darkness, in the cold. It's a selfie. Marcus holding the waterproof camera, his face visible through his dive mask. And in his eyes, in that photograph, you can see the moment he stopped being human, the moment he became something else, something that lives underwater. Some missions don't just test you, they transform you, change what you are at a fundamental level. Marcus Webb's story teaches us that human limits are not fixed. We can adapt to impossible conditions. Extreme environments change us permanently. Survival sometimes requires becoming something other than human. The cost of heroism is sometimes losing yourself. Some people find who they really are in the most extreme circumstances. You can complete the mission and still lose yourself. To the military community, Marcus Webb prevented a war, saved thousands of lives, did something no human had ever done before. He's a hero, but he paid a price. He learned to live underwater and forgot how to live on land. That's the cost of extreme operations. That's the sacrifice of warriors who go beyond human limits. We ask our warriors to do impossible things, to survive impossible conditions, to push past human limits. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they succeed, but they don't come back the same. They leave part of themselves in those extreme places, in the deserts, in the mountains, in the ocean. Marcus Webb left his humanity 40 feet underwater in the Yellow Sea, and he's still trying to find his way back to it. If this story moved you, salute in the comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to Army Story for more military stories that explore the true cost of extreme service. To the SEALs and combat divers, some missions change you forever. That's the price of going where no one else can go. Until next time, stay strong, honor the transformed, and remember, sometimes learning to survive means forgetting how to live. Water Wave Anchor.